In moments of pure, raw fear, the world shrinks down to almost nothing. I never really understood what that meant before that Christmas, before the phone call. 1 minute, my world was as wide and warm as my parents' dining room, filled with the chaotic love of my family. It smelled like roasted turkey and pine. It sounded like my nieces laughing and my dad telling a story I'd heard a dozen times. The next minute, my world was just a 4-inch piece of glowing glass in my hand, and a voice on the other end of the line, a voice that sucked all the warmth out of the holiday and replaced it with a cold, sharp dread I can still feel, clear, as they, all these years later, asterisk the smell of pine and turkey filled the air. And my family's laughter was the only sound I'd really noticed for hours. My mom had outdone herself, as always. The table was groaning under the weight of the food, and the Christmas tree cast soft, dancing shadows on the walls. It was perfect, and that's why the shrill ring of my cell phone was so jarring. It felt like a rock thrown through a window, a violent intrusion into our perfect little bubble. I glanced at the screen. A known number. I almost ignored it. God, I wish I had. My dad shot me a look, a silent put that away. But something made me stand up and walk into the hall. I answered, and a voice, ragged and desperate, spoke 3 words that froze the cheer in my throat. Go home. Now, asterisk the voice was bizarre. It wasn't just the urgency. It was the sound itself. It was a raspy, dry whisper that seemed to crackle like the person was talking through a cheap, broken speaker. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, but it was completely commanding. Before I could even ask who was this, the line went dead. I just stood there in the hallway, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the empty, digital silence. The sudden quiet was somehow even more terrifying than the voice had been. I pulled the phone away and just stared at the screen. Call ended. The number was gone, just a ghost in my recent calls. No area code, nothing. A cold knot twisted in my stomach. The sounds from the dining room, which had been so comforting a minute ago, now sounded miles away, like they were happening to another family. I walked back to the doorway and leaned against the frame. My sister, Sarah, caught my eye and smiled, gesturing toward my empty chair. Everything okay, Mike? You look like you've seen a ghost. Her words just hung there. I tried to smile back, to force some kind of normal expression onto my face, but my muscles wouldn't work. My dad was carving the turkey, his movements smooth and practiced. My mom was laughing at something my brother-in-law, Tom, said. My nieces were arguing in whispers over the last dinner roll. A perfect little Christmas. Snow globe, and someone had just taken a hammer to it. Who was that? My mom asked. Her sixth sense for when something was wrong with one of her kids was kicking in. All eyes turned to me. The chatter died. I don't know. I stammered, my voice sounding weak, not like my own. It was just a weird call, probably a prank, but I didn't believe that. Not for a second. Prank calls are kids laughing or making stupid noises. This was different. This had weight. That stark command. Go home. Now. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't a joke. It felt like a warning, a serious, time-sensitive warning. My dad set the carving knife down. A prank. On Christmas. What did they say? I hesitated. Saying it out loud would make it real, would invite the dread I was feeling into this warm room. But the words were already crawling up my throat. It was just a strange voice. I said, trying to downplay it. It said I needed to go home. Right away. Silence fell over the table. Not a comfortable silence, but a tense, uncertain one. My nieces looked from me to their parents, their faces mirroring the sudden shift in the room. Tom, Ever the pragmatist let out a skeptical laugh. Seriously, that's it. Go home now. Sounds like one of your college buddies messing with you, Mike. Probably drunk on eggnog. My sister nodded, though her eyes were still searching my face. He's right. Who would even know you're here? It has to be a joke. Just turn your phone off and come eat. The turkey's getting cold. They were trying to rationalize it, to smooth it over and get back to Christmas. A huge part of me wanted to let them. I wanted to believe it was a stupid prank. My apartment was an hour away. The roads would be icy. Leaving now felt insane, but I couldn't shake the feeling. The raw panic in that whisper. It wasn't threatening. It was desperate, like someone was trying to save me. I pulled out my phone again and tried to call the number back. It didn't even ring, just a single beep and a call failed message. A dead number, a ghost. I think I should go, I said, the words tasting like ash. My father's brow furrowed. Don't be ridiculous. Michael, you're going to drive an hour in the dark on Christmas because of some crackpot call. Your apartment is in a secure building. What could possibly be wrong? I don't know, I admitted, and that was the scariest part. I just have a really bad feeling. My mom, quiet until now, spoke up. Her voice was soft, but laced with the same worry I was feeling. Maybe you should call the building's front desk or the non-emergency police line in your town, just to have someone check on it, for peace of mind. It was a sensible compromise, a way to check without blowing up the evening. I agreed, feeling a sliver of relief. I found the non-emergency number online and stepped back into the hallway. The dispatcher who answered sounded tired, which was fair enough on Christmas. I explained the situation, feeling more foolish with every word. I know this sounds strange, but I got a weird call telling me to go home, and I was wondering if an officer could just do a drive-by of my apartment building. There was a pause. I could hear a radio crackling in the background. Sir, a drive-by won't tell us much about your specific unit. We're pretty busy tonight. Unless you have a specific reason to believe a crime has been committed like a threat, there isn't much we can do. Did the caller threaten you? No, I said. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. A warning about what? Specifically, she asked, her tone shifting to professionally detached. They didn't say, just go home now. I see, she said, in a way. That meant she didn't see at all. Sir, without a concrete threat, I can't dispatch an officer. It could have been a wrong number. My advice is to try and enjoy your holiday. I hung up, feeling completely alone. The voice on the phone had warned me, and the voice of reason told me to ignore it. Every rational part of my brain screamed that it was nothing, but that deep, primal instinct that something was terribly wrong, it was getting stronger. It felt like a cold stone in my gut. I stood in the hallway, the sound of my family a world away, and knew I had to make a choice that felt, for some reason, like the most important one I would ever make. Section 2. The debate and the departure. I walked back into the dining room. They can't do anything, I announced. Said they can't send a car unless there's a specific threat. My father nodded, with a hint of I told you so. Of course they can't. Now, sit down. Your plate is getting cold. We're about to have pie. He was trying to force things back to normal. For a second, I almost gave in. The smell of my mom's apple pie was drifting in from the kitchen. It smelled like comfort and safety. It smelled like everything the phone call wasn't. But the image of my quiet, empty apartment kept flashing in my mind. I can't, I said, my voice firmer this time. I'm sorry. I have to go. My decision landed with a thud. The festive cheer was officially dead. Michael, for God's sake, be reasonable, my father said, his voice rising. You're letting some crank ruin Christmas. What do you think is going on? Someone broke into a high-security building just to sit in your apartment and wait for you. I don't know what I think. I shot back, my own frustration boiling over. I just know how it felt. That voice, it wasn't a joke. Something is wrong. Sarah stood up and put a hand on my arm, her face full of worry. Mike, listen to yourself. You're spiraling. Remember that time you thought the house was haunted because the pipes were settling? Asked her she was trying to be gentle, but it just made me feel more alone. They didn't just disagree with me, they were questioning my sanity. Tom chimed in again. Look, man, let's just be logical. Best case, you drive an hour, find everything is fine, and you've wasted your Christmas night and worried everyone for nothing. What's a plausible worst case? A pipe burst. The building would have called. There's just no logical reason to do this. He was right. Logically, he was 100% right. But fear isn't logical. The knot in my stomach wasn't listening to his calm arguments. It was listening to the echo of that desperate whisper that my mom was the only one who seemed to get it, at least a little. John, maybe we should just let him go. She said to my dad, if he's this upset, he won't enjoy himself here anyway. It's better that he goes and sets his own mind at ease. My father threw his hands up in defeat. Fine, go. Ruin Christmas. But when you get there and find nothing wrong, you'll feel pretty damn foolish. His words stung, but they didn't stop me. I would have gladly felt foolish to get rid of this gnawing anxiety. The goodbyes were strained. My nieces gave me hesitant hugs. My sister told me to drive safe and text her. My brother-in-law just shook his head. My father wouldn't look at me. It was my mom who walked me to the door. She pulled my coat, tied around my shoulders. You call me the second you walk through that door, Michael. Not a minute later. Understand? I will, Mom. Promise, I said, giving her a quick hug. And be careful, she whispered. If anything feels wrong, don't go inside. Just call 911 and wait in your car. Promise me. I promise. I repeated. The gravity in her voice validated my fear in a way nothing else had. She felt it. To die as I stepped out into the biting December cold. The warmth of the house vanished. A light snow had started to fall. I got into my car, the leather seat stiff and cold. As I pulled away, I glanced back at the house. Through the big window, I could see the Christmas tree, a beacon of light and warmth. I was driving away from the safest place I knew, toward a place a stranger had warned me about. And for the first time, a new, chilling thought hit me. What if the call wasn't a warning to go home? What if it was a lure? Asterisk, the drive was an hour of pure anxiety. Every mile closer to my apartment was a mile deeper into a pit of dread. The roads were mostly empty, a Christmas ghost town. The snow was getting heavier now, a thick curtain smearing across the windshield as the wipers fought to keep up. Mine was a storm. My father's words echoed in my head, mocking me. You'll feel pretty foolish. What if he was right? But then I'd hear that raspy whisper, go home. Now, it wasn't a joke. It felt like a clock was ticking down to something awful. I tried replaying the call, man or woman. I couldn't tell. Was the static part of their voice? And why me? I tried the radio, but the cheerful Christmas carols felt sick and twisted, like the soundtrack to a horror movie. I switched it off, and the heavy silence was even worse. I got closer to my city. The familiar landmarks looked alien tonight. My building was one of those new, super secure places. Key fob for the lobby, key fob for the elevator, high-tech lock on my door, a concierge 24/7. A fortress. That thought should have been comforting. but it just made the potential threat more terrifying. If someone got in, they were no amateur. I finally turned onto my street. Everything was blanketed in a fresh, quiet layer of snow. My building rose up ahead, a dark monolith against the sky. I pulled into the parking garage and killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. I just sat there for a full minute, my hands gripping the steering wheel, afraid to get out of the car. I remembered my promise to my mom. If anything feels wrong, don't go inside. But I had to go up. I had to see. The walk from my car to my fourth-floor apartment was the longest of my life. The garage was silent. The elevator was silent. I clutched my keys, the metal sharp and cold. When the elevator doors opened onto my floor, the hallway was empty and dim. Everything looked normal. My apartment was at the very end of the hall. As I walked, my eyes were locked on my door, just a plain, gray door. But as I got closer, my heart started to pound. Something was wrong. It was tiny, so small anyone else would have missed it. Tucked into the bottom corner of the door frame, there was a tiny smudge of dirt on the clean, white baseboard, and on the door itself, right next to the keyhole, was a faint, fresh scratch, a single, thin line in the paint that I knew, with absolute certainty, wasn't there when I left. Asterisk, that scratch was my proof. The fear was real. Someone had been at my door, trying to get in. My mom's voice echoed in my head. Don't go inside. Call 911. My fingers felt like clumsy, frozen sausages as I fumbled for my phone. I backed away from the door slowly, retreating down the hall to the elevators, my back pressed against the wall. I dialed 911. This time, my voice was sharp. My name is Michael Jennings. I'm at my apartment, unit for 112 at 1550 River Street. I think someone has broken in. There are fresh marks on my door. The dispatcher was all business now. Sir, are you inside the apartment? No, I'm in the hallway. Good. Do not enter the apartment. An officer is being dispatched. They're on their way. Stay on the line with me. The next 10 minutes were excruciating. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, staring at my apartment door. Every little creak in the building was amplified. Every hum a potential threat. Was someone moving around in there? Finally, I heard the ding of a service elevator, then quiet. Professional voices. Two uniformed officers stepped into the hall. They saw me and approached cautiously. Mr. Jennings, one asked. I just nodded, my throat too dry to speak. Stay here, the other said. They went down the hall to my apartment. One stood to the side while the other knocked, sharp and loud. Police, announce yourself. Silence. He knocked again, louder. This is the police. Open the door. Still nothing. After a tense moment, one officer took out a heavy tool. With a sharp crack that echoed like a gunshot, they forced the door open and disappeared into the darkness inside. I was alone again in the hall, my heart pounding. An eternity passed. A minute, two. Then a light flicked on, the familiar glow of my living room lamp. One of the officers reappeared in the doorway, his posture relaxed. It's clear, sir. You can come in. I walked slowly towards my own front door. As I stepped inside, a wave of cold air hit me. The large window in my living room was wide open, the curtains blowing sideways in the snowy wind. But that's not what made me stop dead. The apartment was mostly untouched. My TV was there. My laptop was on the coffee table. Nothing was stolen, but everything was moved just slightly. My favorite chair was turned a few inches to face the window. A stack of books on my shelf was in a different order. A photo of my parents was turned to face the wall. Someone hadn't just been in my home. They had played with it, rearranged my life with the quiet. A nerving power dot, and then I saw it. On the largest wall in the room, someone had written a message in something dark and wet, something still dripping down the pale gray paint. The letters were huge, scrawled in a frantic, unhinged script. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a ransom note. It was just 2 words. "You're welcome." I just stared, my brain refusing to compute. The cops were talking about the open window, the fire, escape, how the intruder likely came in that way. But I couldn't hear them. All I could see was that message. "You're welcome." The raspy voice on the phone wasn't the threat. It was the warning. Someone else had been in my apartment, waiting for me, and that anonymous, ghostly call had saved me. It had pulled me from the safety of my family's home to stop me from walking in. While the person who wrote that message was still here, the dread in my stomach morphed into a vast, bottomless terror. Who was in my apartment, and who, for the love of God, had called to warn me that they had to be connected to phantoms, one evil and one helpful, and I was just a pawn caught between them. An officer put a hand on my shoulder, and I flinched. "Sir, are you all right?" he asked. I couldn't speak. I just pointed at the wall, my hands shaking. I pointed at the 2 words that had turned my world inside out. A thank you note for a crime that was never committed. A greeting card from a nightmare I had narrowly avoided. Asterisk, the rest of the night was a blur of police questions and forensics teams. They took samples from the wall. I told the story of the phone call over and over to detectives who looked at me with a mix of pity and suspicion. They found no fingerprints. The lock had been bypassed with a sophisticated tool, which explained the scratch. The intruder likely came in through the window and planned to leave through the front door. My door. After I got home, the phone call was a dead end, untraceable. They had no leads, no suspects, no motive. My apartment was officially a crime scene. I spent the rest of the night on my parents' couch, unable to sleep. I never lived in that apartment again. I hired movers a week later. I just couldn't step back inside. The police case went cold, filed away as unlawful entry with malicious mischief. A neat little label for the event that destroyed my sense of safety in the world. But the real horror of that night isn't just about who was waiting for me. It's about who called me. I've spent years turning it over in my mind. How did they know someone was in my apartment? How did they have my number? Why warn me? Was it an accomplice who got cold feet, a rival, or something else? Something I can't even begin to imagine. Sometimes, when I think about that strange, distorted voice, I wonder if it was even human. That Christmas shattered more than just a holiday. It shattered my understanding of the world. We live our lives thinking we're safe, trusting our locks and our routines. But that night, I learned that the veil between order and chaos is paper thin, and there are things moving in the darkness. On the other side, I still get a jolt of anxiety when an unknown number calls, and every Christmas, when I smell pine and turkey, I feel a flicker of that same cold dread, a reminder of the night I got a call from a ghost. I never found out who was in my apartment, and I never found out who saved my life. And I have a chilling feeling I'll go to my grave haunted by those terrible words scrawled on my wall, a message meant only for me. If you have a story like this, one that defies any easy explanation, I'd be interested to hear it. The world is a strange place, and sometimes the only comfort is in sharing these stories. Consider subscribing for more that explore the darkness at the edges of our lives. Asterisk, stay vigilant, trust your gut, and maybe think twice before you answer a call from a number you don't know. You never know who or what might be on the other end.